It's Relationship Wednesday, and welcome to the Bad Influence Podcast with yours truly, Bjordan Banderas. Listen to what I have to tell you today. The words you use in your worst moment say more about who you are than anything you do in your best one. You've had the argument. You know the one that triggered you, right? We all been there. I'm talking about the one that started over something small, something almost embarrassingly small, and then escalated into something that had no business being that big. And somewhere in the middle of it, when the heat was at its highest and the filter was completely gone, something came out of your mouth. A word, a name, a label. Directed at the person who chose you. The person who trusts you with the parts of themselves they don't show anyone else. And in that moment, in that one sentence, you use everything you knew about them to cause maximum amount of damage. And maybe it worked. Maybe it landed exactly the way a weapon lands. Fast, precise, devastating. And then the argument ended. And you told yourself it was just heat of the moment. Just words. Just the kind of thing that happens when two people fight. But here's what you haven't been honest about. Oh yes, let's get into it. They haven't forgotten about it. Not even close. That word, that name is still living inside them. It's sitting in a place that doesn't get touched by apologies. A place that doesn't get reached by flowers or makeup conversations or the version of you that shows up the next day acting like it didn't happen. It got in. And once something like that gets in, it changes the architecture of the relationship from the inside. And it does it silently, but permanently. In ways neither of you can fully see yet. So be honest right now. Do you actually believe words don't leave marks? Or is that just the story you tell yourself so you don't have to face what you actually did? Because the truth is, you know exactly what you said. You remember the look on their face when it landed. You saw something shift in their eyes in that moment. Something that was open, closed. Something that was safe, went on guard. And part of you filed that away and move on because sitting with what you actually did is too uncomfortable to hold for very long. But they're still holding it. And today we're going to talk about what that actually means. Yes, we are. Here's the thing nobody taught you. How to fight clean. Think about that before you defend yourself. Really think about it. You learn how to argue the same way you learn everything else in your earliest years. By watching the people around you do it. And what did you watch? Maybe you watched people who fought with everything they had. No boundaries, no rules. Oh, we all been there. No line that couldn't be crossed when the pressure got high enough. You know what I'm talking about. Maybe you watch love and cruelty exist in the same relationship, sometimes in the same conversation. Maybe you watch someone you love get cut down with words by someone who claimed to love them. And maybe you watch them stay anyway. And your young mind absorbed a conclusion it was never meant to carry. That this is just what love looks like when it gets hard. That cruelty in conflict is normal. That the people closest to you are also the ones you're allowed to wound the deepest. Because they'll stay. Because they always stay. And that became the template. Oh, yes, it did. How many of you have that template running right now? not consciously, not with a plan, but deeply, structurally, in the part of you that runs on automatic when the pressure gets high and the filter comes down. Or maybe it went a different way entirely. Maybe you grew up in an environment where conflict wasn't expressed at all, where everything got buried under politeness and silence and the performance of everything being fine. And all that buried conflict had nowhere to go. So it built pressure. And when the pressure finally found a release in your adult relationships, in the arguments that finally cracked the surface, it came out with force that surprised even you. With a heat and a viciousness that you didn't recognize as yours. But it was yours. It was everything that never got expressed finding the first available exit. And your partner absorbed the overflow of a lifetime of unexpressed pain that had nothing to do with them. Think about the specific words you use when the argument reaches its peak. Where did those words come from? Oh, good question. Because they didn't arrive fully formed in that moment. They were loaded long before the argument started. They were the words you know land hardest. The words that target the specific insecurities your partner trusted you enough to share with you in a quiet moment. The words that turn their vulnerability into ammunition. And here's the part that cuts deep. You knew exactly what you were doing. Not entirely consciously, but you knew. Because you chose those words and not others. Because in that moment, your nervous system shifted from partner to opponent. From the person who loves them to the person who needs to win. And winning meant making them feel something worse than what you were feeling at that moment. That's not a communication problem. That's a regulation problem. That's a nervous system that was never taught how to stay in relationship under pressure. That was only taught how to survive it. And survival, real primitive survival, doesn't care about the long-term health of the relationship. It only cares about ending the immediate threat. And in that moment, the person who loves you became the threat. And you treated them accordingly. Not because you're a bad person, and I want you to understand that. Because you're a person who was never given the tools to do anything different when the heat reached a certain level. But here's what conditioning never told you. The tools you were never given, you can still learn. The pattern that was handed to you, you can still break it. The words that have already been said, you cannot unsay them. But the words that haven't been said yet, those are still yours to control. And that control, it starts with understanding exactly what those words do. Not just in the moment, not just to the argument, to the human being on the other side of them. And to the relationship you say you want to keep. Let's talk about what happens in your body right before the words come out. Because the damage doesn't start when your mouth opens. It starts much earlier than that. Oh yes, it does. Feel back into the last time the argument reached that level. There was a moment, a specific moment, where something shifted inside you, where it stopped being a conversation and became something else entirely. Feel what happened in your chest in that moment. Oh yes, feel it. The heat that rose fast, not warm, not the heat of passion, but the specific burning heat of feeling cornered, dismissed, disrespected, or unheard. That heat moved up through your body like something being lit from the inside, and your jaw tightened. And your breathing change, shorter, faster, higher in the chest. And something in your vision narrowed. Not literally, but your focus collapsed down to one thing. The person in front of you and the need to make them understand, make them stop, make them feel the weight of what you were feeling. That's not anger. That's not anger. That's your nervous system dropping into full threat response. And we all have that response. Because it's fight mode. And in fight mode, the part of your brain responsible for empathy, perspective, long-term thinking, and the understanding that this person loves you goes completely offline. Look it up. It doesn't get quieter. It goes offline. And what's left is the part that knows only one thing: neutralize the threat. And the fastest way to neutralize a threat is to wound it. And the fastest way to wound the person in front of you is to use what they gave you in love as a weapon in war. That's the sequence. And it happens in seconds, just like that. And by the time the words are out, the damage is already done. You can't do anything at that point. Now feel what happens after. The moment the heat drops and the words are sitting in the air between you. There's a specific sensation that follows. A kind of hollow sickness in the stomach. Not quite guilt yet, because it's not guilt. Something more physical than that. A dropping feeling. A wrongness that registers in the body before the mind has even fully processed what just happened. Your nervous system knows before you do. Oh, yes, it does. It knows that something just broke. Not ended, but broke. And that knowledge sits in your gut like a stone. And then the justification starts. The mind kicks in and starts building the case. They pushed me. They started it. They know better than to say that to me. Anybody will have reacted that way. And the stomach knot loosens just enough to function. But it doesn't go away. It never fully goes away. Because your body keeps the record of every moment you acted in a way that contradicted your own values. Oh, yes, it did. And using someone's vulnerability as a weapon, no matter how justified the argument felt, contradicts something deep in you. Think about the days after the argument, the way you move around each other carefully, the way normal conversation feels slightly off, like two people performing normalcy over a crack in the floor that neither of you is acknowledging. There's a tension in those days that lives in your shoulders. A low-grade vigilance that makes it hard to fully relax even in the quiet moments. Because some part of you is waiting to find out how deep the damage went. Waiting to see if this is the time it doesn't recover. And living in that waiting, that anxious, unresolved body level waiting, is one of the most exhausting places a person can exist. And you put yourself there. And you put them there with words that took less than 5 seconds to say. So let's hold the mirror up, all the way up. Because this is the part where we stop talking about the argument and start talking about the accumulation. Because it's never just one word. No, it is not. It's never just one moment. It's a pattern. And patterns have consequences that compound over time in ways that single incidents never could. Think about your partner. The person who chose you. The person who, at some point, looked at everything you are, the good parts and the difficult parts, and decided you were worth loving. Now think about what you've been doing with that choice. Every time a word came out in anger that targeted who they are rather than what they did, you made a withdrawal from something that doesn't have an unlimited balance. Trust. Not the surface level trust of fidelity or honesty. The deeper trust. The trust that says, I am safe with you. The trust that says, when I show you my softest parts, you will not use them against me. The trust that says, even when we fight, I know you still see me as someone worth protecting. Every name, every cutting label, every moment you weaponized their insecurity, you made a withdrawal from that account. And that account does not recover at the same speed it depletes. It doesn't. Think about what they've stopped sharing with you. Not the obvious things, the subtle ones, the dream they mentioned once and they never brought up again because of the way you responded when they were vulnerable. The fear they almost told you about but pulled back at the last second because something in them remembered what happened the last time they went that deep with you. The version of themselves that only comes out in complete safety. That version has been going quieter around you. Not because they stopped having it. They didn't. Because they stopped trusting you with it. Oh yes, they did. And you might not have noticed because the surface of the relationship still looks functional. Oh yes, it does. You still talk. You still laugh sometimes. You still share a life. But something underneath it has been shifting. Something foundational. And the shift is this. They are loving you now with a part of themselves held back. A protected part. A part that used to be fully available to you and isn't anymore. Because that part got burned too many times reaching toward you and finding a weapon instead of a hand. Yes, that's what happened. Now, think about that cost. The intimacy that is no longer fully available. The depth of connection that used to exist and has been slowly replaced by a managed, careful version of the relationship. Functional, civil, sometimes even warm, but not whole. Not what it was before the words started leaving marks. And here's the part that cuts the deepest. They still love you. That's what makes it so painful. Yes, that's why it's so painful for them. They are not indifferent. They are not over it. They are not checked out. They are still in it. It's still trying. It's still showing up. But showing up differently than they used to. With less of themselves available. With a quiet guard that wasn't there in the beginning. And that guard is the direct consequence of the words you said in the moments you lost control. Oh, yes. Now, look at what this is doing to them over time. Because words, especially from the person you love most, don't just hurt in the moment. They get absorbed. Oh, yes, they do. And probably you have felt this. They become part of the internal narrative the person carries about who they are. The name you call them in anger, they've heard it in their own head since. Not constantly, not obviously, but in the quiet moments. In the moments of self-doubt. Oh, yes, this is what you have done. In the moments when they're already feeling small. That word surfaces in your voice. And it confirms something they were afraid might be true about themselves. You became the voice of their inner critic. Not because you meant to, because words from the person who knows you best carry a weight that words from anyone else simply cannot match. And that weight doesn't live with an apology. It settles. It becomes part of how they see themselves and part of how they see you. Now, look at where this ends if nothing changes. There comes a point, and it doesn't announce itself, it just arrives, where the accumulated weight of those words become heavier than the love holding everything together. And when that happens, they don't explode. They don't confront you with a list of everything you've said. They just go quiet in a way that's different from all the other times they went quiet. A finality to it, a stillness that feels less like peace and more like a decision already made. And by the time you notice it, really notice it, the distance will be so established that closing it will require more than either of you may have left to give. And you will stand in that silence and finally understand the full weight of what words can do. Not in theory, in your actual life, in the relationship that matter most to you. Damage or loss, one careless sentence at a time. And the hardest truth of all is this: they deserve better than what your worst moments gave them. And somewhere inside you, you already know it. Now we turn towards something better. Not away from the truth of what we just covered, through it. Because the truth we just sat in, as heavy as it is not a verdict on who you are. It's a mirror showing you who you've been operating as under pressure. And those are not the same thing. Who you are at the core, underneath the conditioning, underneath the unregulated moments, is someone who is capable of so much more than what comes out when the heat gets high. You know that. And somewhere in you, right now, that knowledge is already beginning to move. So, let's build the new standard. Not a rule, not a communication tip, a standard. The standard of a person who understands that the relationship is not the battlefield. The relationship is the sanctuary. And sanctuaries have different rules than battlefields. Oh, yes, they do. And we're going to talk about them. Because in a battlefield, you use every weapon available. In a sanctuary, you protect the person inside it, especially when you're in pain. That distinction is everything. Because the moment you start treating the relationship like a battlefield, the moment winning the argument becomes more important than protecting the person, you have already lost something more valuable than the argument. So the first part of the new standard is this: you separate the argument from the person. Whatever they did, whatever they said, whatever triggered the heat in you, that is the issue. Their worth, their character, their identity, their deepest insecurities, those are never on the table. Not in the heat of the moment, not when you feel justified, not when everything in you wants to make them feel the full weight of your pain. You attack the issue. You protect the person every single time, without exception. That is the line. And it's not a line that moves based on how the argument is going. It is a fixed line, a permanent line, a line that exists because you decided the relationship matters more than being right. And I know that can be hard. Now, let's talk about what you do when the heat rises. Because the heat will rise again. Conflict is not the enemy. Conflict handled with integrity is actually how relationships deepen. But the heat, that is specific physical escalation that precedes the words that leave marks, that needs a new response. When you feel the chest tighten and the jaw set and the breathing shift, that is your signal. Not to fight harder, but to pause. Not because you're weak, because you're wise enough to know what happens if you don't. You stop. You breathe. You feel your feet on the ground. Oh yes, you do. And you ask yourself one question before anything comes out of your mouth. This is the question. Is what I'm about to say something I will say to the person I love? Or something I will say to someone I'm trying to destroy? That question, in that moment, is the difference between a relationship that deepens through conflict and one that slowly dies from it. Because you are not trying to destroy them. Even when it feels that way in the heat of it, you are not. You are in pain and you want them to understand the depth of that pain. And there are ways to make them understand that don't require burning down their sense of self to do it. You can say, what you did hurt me more than you realize. You can say, I need you to understand how serious this is. You can say, I am struggling right now and I need something different from you. All of those land. All of those create understanding without creating wounds that outlast the argument, which is important. And I also want you to understand that that is not a weakness. That is the most powerful form of communication that exists in a relationship. Being able to express the full weight of your pain without using the person you love as the target. Now, let's talk about what happens when you've already said the words. Because some of you listening to this are not just thinking about the future. You're thinking about what's already been said. The specific words that are already out there, already absorbed, already living in them. And you need to know what to do with that. The answer is not more apologies in the same form they have already taken. If you've said sorry and moved on and sorry again and moved on again, and the pattern hasn't changed, the apology has lost its weight. What restores weight is not words. It's the sustained evidence of a different behavior. It's the argument that escalates to that familiar threshold, and then something different happens. You pause. You breathe. You choose the relationship over the weapon. And they see it. And the next time it happens, they see it again. And slowly, over real time, through real moments, the evidence accumulates. Not that you're perfect, but that you're fighting for them even in the moments when fighting against them will be easier. That is what rebuilds trust at the level it was broken. Not grand gestures, not declarations, not something fucking expensive. I'm talking about the quiet, consistent, daily choice to be the kind of partner whose worst moments still reflect a fundamental respect for the person they chose. And let's talk about identity for a moment. Because this isn't just about what you say. It's about who you decide to be inside the relationship. The person who uses words as weapons in conflict, that is not your identity. That is a pattern you inherited from an environment that never taught you anything better. And you are not that environment. You are someone who has the capacity to look at the pattern, really look at it, see the damage it causes, and decide that it ends here, with you, in your relationship, starting now. That decision, that specific decision to be the person who breaks the pattern instead of passing it forward, that is one of the most powerful things a human being can do. Not just for themselves, for the person they love, for the relationship they're building, for every version of love that comes after this one. Because when you learn to fight clean, when you learn to hold the line between the issue and the person, you change what love looks like in your world permanently. And if this episode hit something real in you, if something in here made you think about a word that was said, a moment that shifted something, a person who deserved better than what came out of your mouth in the heat of it, hit that subscribe button, because every single Wednesday we come back to this exact work. The work of becoming the kind of partner that the people who love you actually deserve. The work that most people avoid because it requires looking at the hardest parts of themselves without flinching. This is not a podcast for people who want to stay comfortable in their patterns. This is a podcast for people who love someone enough to become better than what they've been. Think about the relationship you say you want. The deep one. The safe one. The one where both people are fully present and fully themselves and fully protected. That relationship doesn't happen by accident. It gets built deliberately, consistently, one hard moment at a time, by two people who decided that how they treat each other under pressure is just as important as how they treat each other when everything is easy. You are one of those people. It's starting now. Not because the past didn't happen, because you have decided that the past is not the blueprint for what comes next. Think about them. The person who chose you, the person who's still there, is still trying, is still holding space for the version of you that you're becoming. They deserve to hear things from you that they carry for the rest of their lives. Not the words that wound, the words that build. The words that say, I see you, I choose you, I will fight for this, and I will fight for you, even in the moments when fighting against you will be easier. Those words last just as long as the ones that hurt. The difference is what they do inside the person who receives them. One erodes, one builds. One becomes the voice of their inner critic. One becomes the voice of their deepest strength. You have the power to be either one. And from this moment forward, you are the kind of person who chooses to build. Yes, you are. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but consistently, intentionally. With the full understanding of what your words carry and what they leave behind. You are the kind of partner whose words, even in conflict, reflect a love that doesn't disappear under pressure. Say that inside yourself. Really say it. Because that identity, that standard, is not who you're trying to become. It's who you're already beginning to be. Right now. In this moment, as the old pattern loses its grip and the new standard takes root. The person you love deserves the version of you that fights for them, even when you're in pain. And you are finally becoming that person. Not someday. Now. Right now. And remember, the choice is yours.